Hi everyone, I'm Stacey Taubman, founder and CEO of Rise Collaborative. Welcome to On the Rise TV, where we feature incredible women and their stories. Today's episode is very near and dear to my heart. It's a former student of mine, because I used to be a high school math teacher. My very first year I taught middle school, and I had Katelyn Young in my class. And she has inspired me since then, and I can't wait for you to learn all about her.
Katelyn Young is a multifaceted entrepreneur who has been making waves since her sophomore year in high school, when she and her sister were featured on the MTV show called Made. Since then, she has gone on to be a stylist of the stars, a model, and even a business owner launching a shoe and accessory line called KM2. With products carried in more than 150 stores nationwide, her accessories were even worn by stars on The Real Housewives of OC. Now, with a husband and 3 young children, Katelyn has become an online influencer and a contributor to a weekly magazine where she empowers other women and mothers by sharing real moments of motherhood through fashion, food, and fun.
Well, Katelyn, it's so good to see you.
Good to see you.
I never would have predicted back in 2001 that I would consider you one of my dear friends and the person I turn to. It really means a lot that you're there for me. And thank you for being on our show.
Thank you for having me. I feel so honored.
Yeah, and I'm excited to talk. You know, one of our things at Rise is to really inspire young people to dream and achieve big, right? And so I think it's really important to back on up and not just talk about the fabulous things you're doing today, but to really go back to the high school days and who you were. Deep breaths.
Yes, seriously.
Yeah, who you were and what you thought you wanted to be when you grew up, and maybe a first job.
When I was in high school, I sort of floundered between a lot of different things. I sort of felt always like I didn't fit in fully. I sort of felt on the outskirts. Like I had friends and I got along well, but I just sort of felt a little removed, like my head was always somewhere else. And then when I was approached with the opportunity for Made, it didn't start out as an acting thing. It wasn't like, I want to be an actress.
Sure.
It was like they came to me and my sister and they said, if you could be made into anything, what would it be? And I was like in high school and I was like, oh, actress sounds cool. You know?
Right, it's one of those careers, yeah.
Yeah, it just was like the most cool career I could think of, and I said it, and then they were like, oh, that's interesting, and then they developed the show around it. And I would say like that sort of changed the trajectory of my high school experience. It didn't
Because you were a sophomore, right?
I was a sophomore, I was 15. So insecure.
And who was it that approached you? And for people who don't know, Made was an MTV show back in the 90s?
Nobody knows.
2000s?
Yeah, it was on MTV, and basically it was like a cult show at the time where you would have this episode where you were made into something. So you'd have a coach for 6 months, and I actually was downtown measuring. I'm 5'1", and I like the shortest of my family. Like somehow I like didn't have a growth spurt. And I was measuring these girls who wanted to be made into models. And at the end of the video, they were like, you're kind of funny, like you're short and little, and what would you want to be made into? And I said it, and they ended up choosing my sister and I for the show instead of the model, and they just like went a totally different direction.
Isn't it funny when random moments like that happen? You would never have expected that.
Yeah, like I'm like on the ground like measuring models like long legs that I never had. You know what I mean? And then like MTV was like, this is endearing, and then they chose us to do the show, which launched this whole realm of my life that I would have never expected. They followed me around high school, so imagine.
That had to be a little awkward.
Oh my gosh. Like all of a sudden, like I wasn't cool. I had friends, but I wasn't cool, and then all of a sudden, all eyes on you.
Oh yeah, that's a big shift.
So you have this like MTV camera following you around. Everyone knows the show. I don't even know what's a comparable show today.
Right.
And you have this coach that's making you do really embarrassing things. Like I had to go to school one day as Julia Roberts from Steel Magnolias, and I had to keep character all day, like with an accent.
In your classes?
In my classes, and they made me stand up in front of the classroom and talk. Like, the fact that I still get stage fright is hilarious, but I do.
Right.
Because it was, like, the most scary thing.
And what did your teachers do as you're acting like?
They were just, like, laughing at me. Like, they were nervous, too. Everyone was nervous.
Sure.
And so I had to go to school. I just had to, like, get over myself really quickly. And I was like, darn it, why'd I say I want to be an actress?
Be careful what you ask for.
Seriously,
right.
Yes. So Yeah, so because of the show, I flew to LA at the end of the show, all of this with my older sister, and we auditioned for a management company, and I have just enough emotion that they were like, you could do this. And so they signed us, and they were like, we want you to move to New York in 6 months. So.
And again, you're 15.
Yes.
Or maybe by that point, 16.
By this point, 16, and I was starting junior year.
Got it.
So, so junior year, I went to high school half day. You go to school half day and you work the other half. And I ended up taking the full year, junior year. I saved everything I made. I worked at Splash, and I was a hostess at California Pizza Kitchen.
Nice.
So double jobs in the same mall. And then that summer, I was 17 years old. I moved to New York.
Wow.
With my sister to be with Wilhelmina Creative, this like company.
Sure.
And then after that, I moved to LA.
Whew, a lot to unpack there.
I know, and I did finish high school.
Sure,
it
of
was
course.
super.
But in
like,
a very non-traditional way, it sounds like.
Yes, I finished through Mizzou, through
Like
their
an online kind of program.
Yeah, I got my actual diploma, and I would go around the New York public libraries, and they would proctor all of my exams.
Nice.
And it was just like, I was just like, okay, I'm doing it.
So you started a career at a very young age. You know,
Yeah.
moving to New York at 17.
Yeah.
That's really bold. How did you have courage to do that? What was that like for you?
I think my dad has always been like, follow your passion, and if the opportunity arises, take it. And so my parents were both like surprisingly totally behind us, and that's huge. Like they supported us. They supported like all the risks. You kind of need somebody to tell you it's okay to try and fail, which like I'll get into, but I failed so many times.
Right.
But I keep trying just because that was instilled in me. And it also helped that I had my sister with me.
Sure.
Who is like my friend, and like when you feel so rejected and you're like, wait, you have somebody to kind of build you up.
Right.
Having somebody close to you to say like, keep going.
Right. Yeah, and so pursuing acting, talk about rejection.
Oh, I was rejected for like 8 years till I was like, okay, maybe I'm done being rejected.
Well, how do you survive 8 years? You know, I think so many people go into these auditions, or even not even acting, right? Like anything people are pursuing, it can be quite daunting to face rejection.
Yeah. Honestly, like my faith was really helpful in grounding me. There was just like I've grown up with a deep-rooted faith, so that was really helpful. My family would come visit me and build me up and encourage me.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you just didn't take it I mean, not that it didn't hurt you, but you were very clear in what you were trying to accomplish, so maybe it didn't stop you?
Yeah, it's almost like an insanity in me, or like a deep-rooted, like I have to keep trying. It's like I can't not show up.
Yeah.
And I think, so like I would go to these auditions and I would be like, honestly paralyzed with fear.
Oh, I'm sure.
And I would cry after every audition.
Would you like get in your car? Well, actually, you're in New York, so you didn't have a car.
In LA, I would.
Right.
And yeah, I would cry. Or like I'd have a really good audition and I'd be like, oh my gosh. And then I'd get a call back. I remember I got a call back for this huge movie. Like the casting director, I still see him. He cast these massive movies. So he had me back for a callback, and the first time I had like sobbed in his office, like delivered my Oscar performance, you know? So then I went back, and there was so much pressure to re-deliver.
Like in that moment, you were so in the moment, and now you have to recreate it.
Yes, and you kind of psych yourself out when you put that pressure, instead of just like letting it go and showing up.
Yeah.
So I've spent like 10 years, like, or now how long? 15 years? Like trying to get out of that like anxiety of psyching myself out and just like showing up and being myself as much as I possibly can.
And try not to overthink it.
That's what I'm trying to say. Yes, I try not to overthink it, which is really hard when you're an
really
overthinker.
Hard. Oh, I think that's why we connect, because we're both very much overthinkers.
And you really can like just lose all that you have to offer if you're overthinking it.
So it sounds like that's a strength and a shadow of yours.
Yeah, I think it is, because I am somebody that always sees opportunity, and I'm always listening, and I'm always observing, and I always want to do my best and deliver at the highest level. But sometimes I think it so much that like the natural thing in me that I have to offer gets overshadowed by that.
Yeah, no, I can see that.
And I see people like, you know, everyone has these like I see like young people all the time. These like innate things that's like makes you unique that you have to offer. And then when you start looking at what everyone else is doing or thinking of the situation, it just like tightens up and it just can't flow out of you. And that's something like I still to this day, I've gotten better.
Yeah.
But just showing up and practicing and going, okay, like I read all I can read, I've practiced all I can practice, and now I'm just going to forget it all.
No, I think that's really smart. And it's a muscle you build up.
That's what you had told me, and you have told me. And I just say, okay, like showing up is working out. Yeah. It's just like a diligence to show up. No matter how afraid you are, you just show up.
Now, I think it's interesting with your path, right? Because you started at such a young age and had success or was, very out there on this big show, this MTV show, and then you face 8 years of trying to become an actress.
Yes.
Even moving to LA.
Yes.
And then switching careers.
While I was trying to be an actress, I was working in the fashion industry. I was doing like celebrity gifting suites. So I was like so humbled. Like I was like dressing celebrities, like all the young actresses. I remember the girl from Nashville came in and I was like dressing her and like shoving her feet in shoes. And I'm like, this is humbling. Yeah. And I started a marketing class at UCLA and it was an extreme marketing class. And the teacher said like, instead of like pushing so hard, like maybe there's something like you're naturally good at that you've been doing all along that you didn't see.
Right.
And for me, that was fashion and shoes.
Because you grew up in it. Your father he works in shoes.
My dad has built 4 massive lines. He worked for Brown, which is now Caleres, for 36 years. So I grew up in the shoe industry. And
then, of course, I mean, not that I had favorites as a teacher.
Totally.
But being a sample size shoe and you bringing me some shoes, I didn't hate that.
No, I'm still, I need to get you shoes.
Sample shoe.
Yes, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm 5'1", so obviously I wore heels my whole life. And it was just like, all of a sudden this mindset change where I was like, wait, just acting is not the only thing I could do.
Yeah, I think sometimes we get in our own way, right? Something's like right there in front of us and it takes someone else recognizing it to get us thinking about it too.
Yes. So we started this company, again, both of my sisters at this point and I, we were like, we're gonna take these like off-designed shoes and turn them into a line. And we started KM2. And I remember calling my mom like 6 months in going, oh my gosh, I didn't know I could love business so much.
Because you had been so singularly focused on acting.
I was like, I'm a creative, I'm an actress, and I'm the next Meryl Streep, and like, this is it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, like I really, like, I did good in acting class. Like I had those components, but I was like, that's all I can do.
Sure.
And then this guy like turned the lights on that there's more. And I just told my mom, I was like, I think I could be a CEO and love it. And I just like, didn't even know that was in me.
How old were you when you were saying that?
I think I was like 19 or 20.
Yeah, I love that.
So that was like a huge eye-opener. We ran KM2 for 6 years, and it was wonderful and really hard.
Yeah, and you're doing these really big things from like 19 to 25.
Yeah, when you like don't know anything.
Right.
It's like I've always been like, let's just do it.
Yeah.
You know, and I think in hindsight, I probably should have planned a little better before like we got an investment for our shoes. And then we just like jumped in.
Sure.
And it's not like I had finished business school. It's not like I had like worked with somebody who had been in business for 10 years to know what not to do. So I did a lot wrong.
Right.
But I basically like all that money we spent was like business school. I went to business school for 6 years running my own business.
I've went to business school making all these mistakes and yeah, no, I can, and I think that's what entrepreneurship is about, right? I don't think all of us are blessed enough to have an MBA or to have had years in corporate America. I think that's helpful.
Yeah.
And we've definitely had people on our show who have done that, but I think it's a misnomer that you have to go get your MBA. You can get it through the life of hard knocks.
Totally.
Right.
And you think that like when you start it, because some people have success right away, that like that has to be your path. And if you don't have success, or if it doesn't go exactly how you planned, it was successful, but it wasn't.
In the way that you had visioned.
Yeah, like if it doesn't go exactly how you planned, that like that's it. And then you start reading up on like entrepreneurs through history and you're like, wait, the biggest entrepreneurs actually had a lot of fails.
Yeah.
and
for
they
sure.
were the ones always willing to try.
Yeah, it's the people that are willing to push past the failure that
Yes.
really make it big. Entrepreneurship to me is not so much about the best idea or, this or that. It's who's going to stay the course.
Yes.
And get through it.
Yes.
And so I think it's interesting. Yeah, again, you were 25 and had this company, or first you had the MTV show, then you're doing this acting, and then you have this company, and then life happens, right? You get married, you start a family,
Yes.
and that definitely changes your dynamic
Yes.
and makes running a company kind of challenging. When I think of you, I think of the quote, "You can do everything, just not all at once."
Yes. I moved home, we got married, and I moved the business to St. Louis. But I didn't really plan for jumping from a LA fashion line to the Midwest.
Yeah, it's definitely a different vibe.
It's a different vibe, and we continued for a few years, and then I had my daughter, and I kept going with the business. And I was a little bit of a crazy mom. And then I had my son, and then I was like, I can't do both.
But good for you for recognizing that.
Yeah.
I think so often people just guilt themselves into continuing and driving themselves crazy.
I did for a little bit.
Well, I appreciate you.
Yeah, I did for 2 years until I just felt like I was losing myself. And I thought, you know what? There's nothing to say that I can't pull back from this and reevaluate and recreate something else.
Sure, a pause doesn't
later.
mean done.
Yes. And I was unhealthy. I was unhealthy trying to balance.
Yeah.
And I couldn't balance. So
But I think sometimes hitting those walls, you have to.
yeah.
Especially when you're so passionate about something, it's hard to stop it.
Yes.
But I appreciate that when you hit that wall, as ugly as it may have been,
Yes.
you figured it out and
And
paused.
I realized this season of my life, I'm okay, it's a small season. And I had done it so young that I thought,
Well, right.
whatever, I still see myself doing more. I mean, what's next? You know what I mean?
Well, I didn't even think about entrepreneurship till I was 33, right?
Yeah.
And so I think you can do it at any time.
Yes.
And for you to have done so much at such a young age,
Yeah.
it almost probably was daunting.
It was. It was overwhelming, and I think you kind of need mental space to breathe.
And so you have shifted, right?
Yeah.
Since you have had children and pursuing, you've done so many interesting things, which I know we've had conversations where
Yeah.
sometimes it feels, a little uncomfortable because you feel like, which one do I do? But I think it's so important because so many people are multi-talented and multifaceted. And
Yeah.
there's so much pressure to, pick this lane and stay in it, but that's not reality, and we don't have to be that way. So I love that
Yeah.
you can showcase that.
Yeah, because we're ever evolving, changing, and I think being okay with that. Some people pick one thing and it sticks their whole life.
Sure.
But I guess I've realized now that I have kids, I hope that my kids would know it's okay to switch and it's okay to transition into something else and it could be better. And you always take what you learned in one to the next thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I know you don't like the term influencer.
Oh, horrible term.
But you are in many ways an influencer, and whether, I don't know, micro-influence. I know 2019 was the year of micro.
It's micro.
I heard 2020 was the year of nano influencers,
Yeah.
or whatever.
I don't even know what the cutoff
But
is. for those.
nonetheless, there are people who really follow you on Instagram, really appreciate your voice, appreciate how authentic you are. How has that journey been? Because in some ways, you were acting and on camera.
Yeah.
In some ways, you're still, not that you're acting on Instagram, but you're still very out there.
Yeah, I think like you said, when you started thinking about being an entrepreneur, it's once you kind of get bit by the bug of entrepreneurship and creating, it's you can't escape it. And so even though I was focusing on raising my kids, I still had this creativity I needed to get out. And it was sort of at the time where Instagram was changing and I started sharing. My daughter and I were cooking for my husband cookies one day and I got this idea I'm gonna cook with my daughter and we're gonna
It's so cute.
make videos.
Right.
And we just started releasing content, and it grew a good amount. She can't be bothered with me anymore.
How old is she now?
She's almost 7, going on 17.
Sure.
And but I started connecting with a lot of moms and a lot of people in St. Louis. And it's opened other doors, and it's allowed me to create and still be entrepreneurial, even when I'm in the season of figuring out
Well, juggling 3 kids.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly.
Well, I think some of it is you were willing from the beginning to be authentic and share behind the curtain before being authentic was kind of a buzzy word.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's Brene Brown has brought that to the forefront, but that's kind of just who you are, and you've done it from day one, which is really refreshing because someone like you who's had this interesting career can be really intimidating to people. It can almost feel unapproachable.
Just so fun.
I know you feel that way. But from the outside looking in, you can feel just, you're not unapproachable, but what you've done.
Yeah.
And so I think your willingness to share the reality of it has been really impactful.
I think I've lived so much life from like the Maid show to now that I like could never lie and act like I have it all together. And I could never like make people think that like I feel at some level, because the reality is you never really feel like you've made it. You always feel like you're grappling to figure out more, what's next, and growing.
Sure, no matter how many followers or no matter how many things you've done.
No, and I think everybody deals with that sense of insecurity, and I think for me, like some of the ways I was humbled in LA, I just thought, I want to be somebody that's disarming to people. I remember going to like parties in LA and being like, I'm not going to talk too much because people are going to figure out that I'm not that cool. So they think I'm cool, so I'm just going to keep my mouth shut and like stand here in this cool outfit.
So you just smile and like,
yes. And now that I'm older, I'm like, I'm just going to tell you everything wrong with me right away so you know, like we can level.
But isn't it funny because that person that was just being too cool, right? Nobody wanted to talk to you. But now that you're willing to show the hot, you're not a hot mess, but just show the reality. People are like, you're a magnet.
I am a hot mess.
Yeah. I'm only saying that because I'm a hot mess. I was projecting onto you.
My husband will tell you. Yes, now that I mean, 30 really was like a transition for me, and I was like, I don't have time to not level with people. Like, I don't have time to live in this world where I'm trying to project that I have more figured out than I do.
Yeah.
And it's helped me, and I've met so many cool people, and I've realized, like, some of the classes I've taken at Rise, these, like, super high-powered executives, they feel the same way.
Isn't that mind-boggling? I think that is one of the things I love the most about Rise and the things I've done.
Yes.
Because I keep looking at people and thinking, you're going to be so different from me, or if you reach this level, you must just have it all together, and your life must be so different than me. And then to realize, oh wait, they're just like me. That gives me a lot of courage to keep going.
People like super high up, and I've been in like small meetings with them, and like, I'm like, wow, that is so encouraging. And it just makes you feel normal.
Yeah.
You know?
We all have our stuff.
Yes.
And the more we're willing to talk about it, the more we give other people permission to go after their big dreams.
Yes.
You know, I love that. So you had your kids.
Yeah.
Became an influencer.
Yeah.
So what's next? You're probably like hating me right now for that question. But no, 2020, I mean, I think your life has really been, what I love about watching you is this evolution, you know, that's constantly evolving and constantly growing and trying new things. Do you have anything you're really excited about?
I'm redoing my site, and I'm gonna try to write more and like share more behind the curtain. Not in like a way where I like feel like everyone needs to listen about my life, but just in a way like I want to be more honest and more authentic.
Well, I think your audience is craving more. You know, they're showing that.
Also, I have a few business ideas that I'm just kind of like scratching the surface of like research and letting myself think about them.
Yeah, and I sort of think that's the fun part.
Yeah, and I'm giving myself space because like I said, in the past I've had an idea and I'm like, I'm making this blog, or I'm like creating this line, or I'm doing this business. And I'm giving, because I have to, because I have 3 children, I'm giving myself space to think, what do I really want to do? It definitely will be fashion probably related. But like, I also found out I love writing.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. Now that you're a contributor to Town and Style.
I'm writing for Town and Style, and I thought, of all the things I'm doing right now, that's my favorite thing I'm doing. I love writing, and I think looking for more opportunities where I can write for different publications or whatever is out there, like that.
And people
definitely
are
is a
loving
goal.
that. You know, I think prior to that, you probably would have said, no, I'm not a writer. No, I don't want to do that.
Yeah. yeah, but they said you can be candid and normal and like be yourself. And they named it My Messy Mom Life. So I am a hot mess because they said I am and I say I am. And just the opportunity to write and be yourself has been so wonderful for me.
It's very freeing.
Yes, and I really like it more than I thought. So I'm gonna definitely, that's my 2020 goals, and then keep thinking about like business-wise, but that's probably a few years down the road.
Yeah, you just have a few things.
Yeah, I gotta get through.
Well, one of the questions we love talking about here is around the quote, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I think that really has impacted my life.
Yeah.
So who are some people that have shaped your life, and who are, you know, a 5?
I mean, like, who do I hang out with? My 6-year-old.
Aside from your children.
I know, right?
It sounds like your daughter really is teaching you.
Yeah, she's teaching me.
Raising a strong girl.
I have been, recently, actually, I've got to spend a lot of more time than I did growing up with my dad. And so he retired this past year. And I've seen a lot of people retire, and it's kind of like, I'm retired, I'm done.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like when you're like 60 or over, he's over 60, like that's it. Like now I'm going to enjoy or relax.
Well, he's worked for so many years, and people sometimes reach to a point and they're like, I'm out.
Yes, and I guess like what I've watched him do is like over 60, like he's still seeking, he's still searching, he's still up at 6 a.m. Like sometimes I walk up and steal coffee, and he's researching, and it's like this is a new beginning for him, and he's reached a really amazing pinnacle of success, and then now transitioning, it's like he's seeking and searching, and I just find that so inspiring, and I feel like that's innately in me.
Yeah, I was gonna say it sounds like you're describing yourself in many ways. And
yeah,
so I can see where you got that.
His intensity level, I get too, I guess. But I thought, you know what? Like over 60, like I started reading about people who created businesses over 60.
Yes.
And I thought, like you feel this rush, like I have to figure it out now. And then you start reading about these people, and then
like McDonald's and Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Yes, and I'm watching my dad going, okay, like you never stop. I don't think you ever stop searching and learning.
Well, I think when you have that viewpoint, right?
Yes.
I think too many people don't have that viewpoint, and it's a very different lifestyle. But I love seeing people actually embracing that.
And my mom actually, who's never been, she raised all of us, and now she's over 60, she's reading all these business books. And she's like kind of researching stuff with my dad, and like, you know, they're just reading and walking and talking, and I just feel like that's been really inspiring for me, because I go, okay, like even when I hit 60, like I'm gonna keep learning and keep searching, and that's been really...
That's so inspirational.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, it was so good catching up with you. I appreciate your time. I know juggling 3 kids and your house renovation is quite a bit. So thank you for taking the time.
Seriously, I feel so honored. I feel always honored to be a part of Rise. You've taught me so much, so thank you for having me.